Welcome to Green and Growing, where we embody the spirit of continuous improvement and the legacy of Jack Perry. I'm Wade Perry of the Perry Properties Group of Denver, Colorado.
And I'm Matt Perry with Perry Property Advisors here in Newport Beach, California.
Join us for an inaugural episode of our podcast, Green and Growing.
Together, we're going to explore the world of real estate, sharing stories, advice, strategies to help you on your journey.
So let's make every day an opportunity to be green and growing and upsize your life to the next level. Welcome.
I've been wanting to say that, sorry.
Do you know that from SNL?
Come on.
Okay. All right, so Matt, you know, there's an old saying that fundamentals don't change, and, you know, they're fundamentals for a reason, but I think about how much faster real estate goes, how much faster life goes. It seems as though you could be ahead of everything, and the next thing you know, you're behind. And as much as you pour into your client, and you want to pour into your family, and you want to pour into yourself to take care of the machine like we talked about earlier, what type of things did Dad teach you that enabled you to handle this new dynamic that we live in now? What is it that allows you to pour into clients and your family that Dad would have taught us?
Well, I think the one word to start with would be balance.
Yeah.
And then, as we talked about earlier, you've got to spend time on yourself in order to be productive.
Yeah.
And one of his great lines was, work hard, play hard. Now, one thing I said to Dad, you know, as much as the guy, I challenged, find anybody with the amount of lectures, adages, axioms with him, you can't compete with him.
No.
But one I came up with is that I called it the 3 F's.
Oh.
And I called it family,
Yeah.
finance, fitness. And he
Okay.
said, and this is where he made it, he said, well, the 4th S should be fun. And I said, fun for
I
me
like that.
is having a good balance of the first 3.
Okay.
And I learned from a guy named Michael Goslin who did really well in Laguna for a lot of years. And he told me early on, he said, don't let the business take over your life. And especially if you're going to become a husband and dad. I could sell a lot more real estate, sell a lot more houses.
Right.
And I see guys around here that do it. But I wasn't going to get to the end of the road and look back and say, I wish I had spent more time with my wife and children. Because I knew that it's limited time. It's like, Mom tells a story how she cried after she watched me play my last game in college. She said she cried like a baby. And I know you were the same way. I'm the same way. I mean, here tomorrow I'm going to watch, and Sunday I'm going to watch our daughter play.
Yeah.
Absolutely love it. But I guess to really answer your question is, you have to spend the time sharpening the sword. It comes down to that same thing, that story of the 2 guys cutting wood in the forest.
Yeah.
One guy disappears for an hour every day,
Yep.
comes back, and he outcuts the other guy every day. And the guy can't figure it out. How is he doing that? Because he goes home and sharpens his axe every day.
That's right.
So I think, you know, it's again, it kind of ties into that green and growing. Are you doing something to stay moving forward? And I hate to say it, but this is about competition. So I'm going to make darn sure I have all the tools, call them weapons, whatever I need, to be as productive as possible.
I think that's absolutely dead on. That, and you live it.
Yeah.
You absolutely live it. I have heard you on the phone tell people, I can't see you today. I can see you tomorrow because you're going to go see Kellen or Quinn do something. And it's one thing when people talk. It's another thing when they walk. And you've always done that.
What's interesting, though, is I don't think I've had anybody ever have a problem with it. If most say, hey, great, good for you,
right.
That's great, or they ask questions and they have interest. And in this day and age, I mean, I don't have my phone on me. We can do so much remotely. As much as when you hire me, you get me. Now, I have someone in the office that does a lot of work, of disclosures and things like that. But that's, and this is kind of going back to answer your question, I have intentionally had a rule. I never take more than 5 or 6 listings at a time. You will not deal with an underling or someone that is there to show the home. So I know it's different where we are.
Yeah.
You know, a lockbox is called lazy, and it's called not doing your job. Here, I need to see the whites of their eyes. Because when you hire me, number one, I am there to help promote the property, help point out the positive attributes. And in what I always tell a seller is, I give them a homework assignment of give me bullet points and really help me tell the story of this property.
Yeah.
Because it's something that I think a buyer wants to hear.
Absolutely.
And not just improvements, and they've done flooring and cabinets and this and that, but to really embellish and really kind of help this potential new owner understand of why it's such a great value to the current owner.
The way that we will always say that is when we take somebody at first appointment, it's always a 2-appointment process.
Right.
Because, and I'll look at the seller and ask them, I won't even ask them, I'll just tell them, I just find it very hard to believe that anybody could walk into your house, walk through the house, and in 60 minutes understand everything you've done to the house, all the special places in the house, price the house, and come up with a marketing plan all in an hour.
No.
Or even 2 hours.
It doesn't work.
You just can't do it. Put it this way, you can't do it correctly. So what I will say to them is, when we go through the property, because it's always a property when we're selling. It's always a home when we're buying because it's emotionally charged. But when we go through your property, I want you to stop in certain rooms, and I want you to share with me what you love about that room. Where did you spend your time as a family? What are the memories you created in certain places? Because whatever areas of the house that you used the most and created the most joy and memories for your family, it's probably going to be the same for the next family. And we want to make sure we incorporate that in how we design the custom marketing message to the public.
Sure.
And I think it's huge. Let me ask you this. We have a totally different markets.
Right.
I'm in Colorado, and we have much larger parcels, and you get more house for the money and all that type of stuff. And, we deal with things like winter, where we sell twice as many homes between April and October than we do November and March. So it's very, very different stuff. But what advice did I give you that you look back on and say, boy, that helped my business be better?
I think you helped reiterate that you have to really run it like a business. You have to have a plan.
Yeah.
And you have to know your numbers.
You have to know your numbers.
And it's interesting how when I
expand on that. When you say know your numbers, what does that mean to you?
All kinds of different numbers. I mean, you've got to know the numbers of your farm and your product.
Yep. And
you have to be able to give out the quick speak quickly, because you never know when you might run into someone and they're going to say, "Hey, Matt, good to see you. What did Scott's house sell for over on Walnut?" Or what's the average cost per foot, or what's the days on market right now, or if I got $2 million, what's that going to do for me in Eastside versus Newport Heights versus other side of the bay?
Right.
Know your numbers as far as your own business. You should pay attention to your units in volume,
as well as each side. How many buyers? How many sellers?
Right.
And what's your days on market? And what's your percentage of list to sale price?
Right. I think you've been a huge help.
So running your business like a business instead of just waiting for someone to call and closing a deal and putting some money in the bank and go on a trip.
Right.
You feel like you went to a business at some point.
So that's just about when you got in. So again, 03, 04, 05, you literally could fall out of your chair here locally. I mean, there's just all kinds of, it was a fever. And
meaning when you say fall out of your chair, meaning business fish were jumping in the boat. You didn't have to be good.
No.
Anybody with a license could make a nickel.
Right. And you literally could, hold an open house, and you could get a lot of clients that were looking for homes or wanted to sell a home. And the internet really hadn't had the impact yet. And so that changed things quite a bit. And it was really at that time when you started to get in, and I realized how much more of a seasoned businessman you were than I was. And I started looking at a couple individuals and how they had just continued to have such great years, and it dawned on me, they're farmers. And that's that's the neat irony about what we do, coming from our family. And that, here's our grandfather.
You need to expand on this. This is good.
Well,
this is gold.
So let's start with Floyd Perry. Okay, that's our dad's dad. Comes to California on the top of a boxcar, 6th grade education.
On the top of a boxcar, and then on a train.
On a train.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we're not talking, this isn't the penthouse area. Like, he probably snuck up there knowing him.
He was with a hobo.
And here's a guy who had no education, but I'd say...
He was an orphan.
Absolute MBA in street smarts.
Oh, yeah.
And he was a farmer. And he was the one that I think bestowed upon our father the great line I love: it takes the farmer's shadow on the soil to make the crop grow.
Yep.
So I started looking around, and I said, there's a couple guys that just, they year in, year out, they tend to do a lot of business. They have a great book of business. They farmed an area.
Yep.
And so I started attacking it. And here we are, it's 20 years later. And I can honestly say, you do the math, it's, my farm's over 5,000 doors, and they have gotten at least 10 pieces from me for 20 years. How many pieces of mail is that?
1 million.
Over 1 million. And it's absolutely been what has enabled me to get a market share, raise my family, own a nice property in my farm, and live a good, comfortable life. Now, I love working every day. I really do. I mean, I've said all the time, if you told me, take my last 5-year average, which is a good number, if you told me you would double that, but I had to go sit in a cubicle 5 days a week, I'd say I won't do it.
No,
I love the freedom of what we do, but there's also always something to be done.
Well,
always.
Considering we are the maitre d' all the way down to the dishwasher,
the cook, the dish, absolutely. And it's true entrepreneurism. You've said it yourself. I mean, show me another industry where you outlay as much time, energy, and personal money with no guarantee of compensation.
Well, that's probably why the average realtor makes $32,500.
Right.
And which is basically minimum wage today.
Right.
And we have a joke in Colorado that when you get your hunting license, they give you a real estate license with it. It's pretty bad. But, it's interesting that you talk about that.
But that's really what I want to keep going on, is that if you want to succeed in our business, you got to be a farmer.
Well, and you have to work. So let me ask you this. What we like to say that we only work the days that end in Y.
Yeah.
We take all the others off.
Sure.
And, another guy said to me once, you're going to work like nobody else for 5 years, and then you'll live like nobody else for the rest of your life. It's not true.
No.
Because you are still going to grind, and markets change, markets shift. But I think what I'm hearing is another little pearl from Jack, which was, if you love what you do, which, by the way, is not selling houses.
No.
It's not putting people in the car to go buy houses.
Oh, God, no.
What we do is we help people change into the life that they want. Mm-hmm. They need a different house so their kids are in a different school district. They need a different house because their marriage didn't work out. They need a different house because they got married. Whatever it is, we play an incredibly pivotal role in helping people get to somewhere else. That's what we do. It's not buying and selling houses. But what Jack would say to us is, if you truly love what you do, you'll never work another day in your life.
Mm-hmm.
Period.
Well, and that's, going back to your question about, what were some of the things he told us, it's all about prospecting. There's a lot of different ways to do it. Now, where we take the approach of, again.
Now, would you call it prospecting? I mean, it's an old salesy word. Mm-hmm. And I think of prospecting as cold calling.
Nope.
And
won't do it.
I prefer to think of it as, your great line that you taught me was, my job is to help you become exposed and educated to the realities of the market, so that when you walk into the right house, you'll know it's the right one and you'll know it's a good deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's the crux of it right there.
Yeah.
Wrong, right?
No, dead on.
Okay, so let me ask you this. When you look forward and we try to forecast what's going to happen in Orange County and not in 20 years, but what are the biggest opportunities in our real estate market? And I don't necessarily mean, maybe it's an area, maybe it's a type of house, maybe it's a price point, but also what are the challenges that the real estate market here is facing?
Well, let's start with the challenges would be inventory. And we understand.
Okay, so let's use outside language, not inside language, because the public doesn't know what inventory is. Inventory to the public are loaves of bread on a shelf.
So we're talking about the fact that for quite some time we've had a very low amount of homes on the market. Okay. And again, if you know your numbers and pay attention, we are just now recently starting to see that creep up a bit. But in, say, a 5-year average, we're still well beneath what we've seen.
Okay.
Now, what has happened, when the rates were still, say, in that 3% range, that inventory was staying low just because there was such a frenzy of buyers taking advantage of low-cost money.
It's free money.
And eating up the inventory. Now, rates shoot up to 6 and 7%.
Almost 8.
What has happened is that there's a lot of sellers, and I've met with them, that would love to take advantage of all this unearned equity. Mm-hmm. But they're snug in their low 3% or high 2% money. There's no incentive.
Hi.
Yeah, me too. Exactly. And they have no incentive to sell their home,
right?
Up their basis, but more importantly, take on a 7% interest rate.
No.
So that's really one of the issues we're having right now.
So just to put a bow on this so that I make sure that the audience understands, we have a lot of sellers who would love to sell, but they are what we call rate hostage.
Yep.
They have a rate of 2 5/8 to 3 1/4, and they may like to go to this other house, but they would basically have to buy a house that is of the same, basically half the value of what they're in now.
Correct.
To keep the same payment.
Yep.
So
there's no incentive.
So that shrunk the number of sellers in 2023. And we had buyers in 2023 that they had been out looking in 22 when rates were in the 3s and 4s, and they couldn't find what they wanted. So we get to the 23, and now we're into the 5, 6, 7s. Well, they couldn't find what they liked in the 3% when rates were in the 3s. They sure as heck can't find it now that it's in the 7s.
Well, because
so they went to the sidelines,
and they've been punched in the gut.
Oh, completely.
They're kicking themselves because now, let's say they're looking at a home for $1 million.
Right.
What's their price point they're looking at today?
Well, if they were looking at 3, and now that the rates are at 6.5, now they're looking at 500,000.
Right. So they're defeated. They're feeling very defeated. So to answer your question, I think we have.
So what's your advice to a buyer today that went through that cycle of 23, couldn't find what they wanted? Nobody has a crystal ball. They couldn't see that rates were going to skyrocket, that Jerome Powell was going to jack rates the way he did. And by the way, just for the record, I think he has done an absolutely incredible job. Maybe the best job I've seen of any Fed chair since I started following the economy back in the late 80s, early 90s. I mean, he got dealt a hand of cards that was just unbelievable. And how he's handled this to where we're not in a massive recession. This isn't the government. This isn't Joe Biden. This isn't Donald Trump. This isn't anybody in Washington. This is Jay Powell. He's the guy that is doing this. And nobody could forecast that's where rates were going. So they didn't realize you better buy something now.
Sure.
But if you're talking to that buyer today, what are you telling them as far as where rates are going to go in the next 6 to 24 months? And what should they do?
We can all speculate where we think rates are going to go. Do we think there's downward pressure? We do.
Jim Rome, have a take.
Yeah, have a take. You know, my advice would be, I'm not just going to jump right out and say, you know, buy the house, date the rate.
Right.
I'm not so much a fan.
What does that mean?
Well, hurry up and buy it.
Sorry. We're back.
Are we back? So that's date the rate, you know, buy the house. I think
what you're saying is buy the house
and then
now at whatever rate is available, and at some point in the next 2 years refinance that rate.
Yes.
That's what you mean by date the rate.
If those rates come down. You know, there's a lot of speculation. None of us know really what's going to happen. Do I think there'll be some downward pressure and the rates could drop? I do. But I'd say let's go backwards and say I think so much of this recent generation has gotten so wound up in the home, their primary residence, as being this vehicle of found wealth.
Right.
That's not why you buy a home.
No.
You buy it, place to live, enjoy the tax benefits, and create your own equity over time.
Right.
Okay? But with these...
What's the most important thing there?
Time.
Time.
Yeah. Absolutely. And, you know, it's...
Get rich quick, you know, when people are flipping houses. And you remember the commercial on TV when the guy, he's in front of the house and there's the sign and the realtor's like, congratulations. And they say, yeah, I just bought it. Okay, I'd like to sell it. And it's literally in that commercial. It goes from closing to wanting to sell. Sure. And you remember that time.
Yeah.
But that's not the answer.
Well, you and I did a couple of projects. We did the project that we did pretty well on.
Yeah.
But that was a mistake. We shouldn't have sold it.
No, I would agree.
So I guess going back again to your question, I think affordability is a big issue right now.
Okay.
And I think inventory is also the other part of it. And advice I give to any buyer is I always tell them, first and foremost, figure out where you want to live first.
Jack, that's a Jack.
That's the most important.
What did Jack tell us?
Yeah. Live where you want to live. Do what you want to do.
Yep. Build your life around it.
I don't, you know, as we talked about a minute ago, we focus on working with more sellers than buyers on the annual average. At least I have been.
Yeah.
And that's just because I farm, and that's generally where the leads come from,
sure,
or the contacts from owners. But when I work with a buyer and I there's been a number in the last couple of years that, gosh, we've looked at Huntington and Eastside Costa Mesa, North Tustin, and I do try and nudge them early of like, take some time, go drive some neighborhoods. I'm glad to take you and show you homes, but if you want on your own, go get a feel for these neighborhoods and figure out where you want to be. Now, there's going to be a lot of different factors that determine why you want to be in that neighborhood. Is it close to work? Is it close to family? Are there schools you want to be by? Is it because you're a mountain bike rider and you want to get out? Whatever that is, figure out where that is. Figure out what you can afford. And that's where I always drill home with any buyer is you need to figure out the lines of comfort before you go shopping. And that's imperative.
Expand on that.
Sure. I don't care if it's your first or 10th time. Meet with a lender, if not multiple, a direct lender or mortgage broker. Get different opinions or at least guidelines of what your comfort zone is.
Okay.
And it's, the analogy I always say is it's like putting a puzzle together. They're going to look at your income, look at your debt ratios, look at your credit, look at your assets, and determine and help you understand, look, here's a price point that's probably workable for you with X amount down as a down payment, and here's what your monthly payment will be. Then you've kind of got a part of that equation made that you can figure out, okay, where are their homes within this price point that will check the boxes or be or have the requirements I have, meaning a number of bedrooms, size of the home, 2-story, single-story, pool, size of parcel, location. All those things I think are really important to help a buyer think about before they go out and shop.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think to expand on that, one of the things that we like to share with people is buying a house is a process of elimination, not selection.
Yeah.
And the example I like to give to people is, and expanding on what you talked about, know what your affordability is, know what you talk to the lender is, the biggest crime I could commit to you as a buyer is to go out and show you homes that are priced at $1.5 million, $1.6 million, $1.7 million. You fall in love, and then we find out that the bank's only going to let you buy $1.3 million. Yeah. I have absolutely done you the biggest disservice that I could possibly do as a realtor. So you have to go and find out what you can afford to shop with. But on the process of elimination, when we find out that, okay, this is the budget that we can go with, and depending on whether the market is really hot or not, if the market's cooling, maybe we can look at prices that are a little bit above that, and we can negotiate lower. If the market's really hot, maybe we have to start in a little lower, knowing that we have to build ourselves up in a competing situation. But as we sit there and we talk about the affordability, and then we say, okay, you can afford $1.5 million. Well, that means that, I don't know your market, but let's say that, okay, in Denver, that means Cherry Hills Village, and that starts at $3 million. So that's off. Greenwood Village, that starts at $2 million. That's off the table. You really need at least a half an acre because your son likes to train dogs. Okay, this area only has parcels of a quarter acre. And we start just carving away where this area goes away, this area goes away, this area goes away. And now we get to laser focus in on the area and the price point that will fit. And now we're going to make better use of your time and our time so you don't go out and look at 37 different houses when you probably could have accomplished everything in only seeing a dozen.
Right.
Let me ask you this. When you think about, the long term, which you've done this now for over 2 decades, what's the next 2 decades look like? What do you want to look back 20 years from now? 20 years from now, you're going to be roughly 75. Look back, or let's take 10 years. In 10 years, you're 65. I want you to say, okay, my goal at 65 is this, and I want to look back at 65 and say, this is what I've created. And I'm not necessarily referring to wealth, but let's talk legacy. Let's talk about, things that you want to instill, whether it's into your industry, your family, what have you, your personal goals.
Well, I've started recently, as you know, Kellen's 20. It's our son.
That can't be.
Yeah. And he got his license when he was 19.
Because I'm only 29.
Right. And it's been really fun for me to show him and have him be involved and compensate him.
So Kellen is now working with you.
Yes. Not full-time. He still has another job. And I told him, I said, you're too young to get in this full-time. And at your age, I don't think you're ready. And I don't, if you want to do it full-time, great, but you don't have to.
Well, his demographic isn't ready to buy a house.
No, and I've told him that. I said, and he's hungry. And he's dying to go out and just crack some of his own deals. And I've explained, I said, it's really hard at your age to find someone that's going to trust you to go from point A to point Z.
And if I'm not mistaken, I don't think he owns a razor yet, does he?
Yes, he does. He does.
Does he need to use it?
Yes, he shaves quite often.
Because he still has a baby face, just like you did at that age. So looking back, so the legacy 10 years from now
would be that, I guess, and I don't know if this is selfish, but it's more about, can I show not just Kellen and Quinn, here's been a great way for me. That's when I hear about legacy, I don't care about other people. I'm talking about my family.
Right.
Because that's really what matters to me.
Sure.
And that I have shown them a great way to be their own boss, live a good balanced lifestyle, and I've explained to them, and as I've had other conversations where, when you represent sellers and you have this, say, established farm, it's a really beautiful business if you work it right. And it's truly something that I think he knows, and I've said it to him, for as much as he did athletically and as much as our daughter's done athletically, 3 times I've missed, and I regret every one of them. Absolute mistake, regrets. So I really no, and that's something I cherish, and that it's afforded me this ability to run my own business. And you think about, and I use this analogy as well, if I wanted to go open a shoe store here on Coast Highway, the hundreds of thousands of dollars I would be into that before I sold one shoe, or a restaurant or something like that.
Well, I'll give you the restaurant.
Yeah.
I'm going to be close on this, but if you want to buy a McDonald's franchise, and I'm close on the number, this could be 10 years old, but I remember somebody told me that you buy a McDonald's franchise, it's $1 million, and for the $1 million, they give you a book. That's it.
They don't even give you the real estate, or
No, they don't give you the building, the real estate, the materials, the product, the employees, none of it. They give you a manual.
So that's really interesting, that I've tried to show them, I don't know of another way that you can have the freedom we have, and I don't want that to be taken the wrong way, because I enjoy working, but to be able to maintain that balance. That's just, again, that's really been big for me, is balance. And that, you got to be really effective and productive when you're locking in. And that's, again, where I know myself and my own human nature is get up early, get to the office early. And there's a lot of times I'm still on the phone at 7 o'clock at night, or, like last night we did dust shot, night shot for a new listing. That's not hard work, but there's a lot of times I'm on the phone or at someone's home.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of 7-day weeks and more than, say, 10 to 12-hour days.
Sometimes it's, 30-day months.
Right. But again, it's being in control, and you're in business for yourself. Right. And that's really, I want to show them that, hey, I've always told my children, if you want to play the tuba, I'm in. Whatever you want to do. Now that they're getting older and they have to start thinking about careers, I'd say be very careful about getting yourself into a position where you can be replaced by someone, and then you've got all these financial obligations and no way to pay for them.
Well, and it's coming. You talk about real estate being the ultimate entrepreneurial business, and call it the way to be able to not only pour into other people and change people's lives, but of no other way to be able to, if you really work it, create your business for you. I mean, Jack used to say, if you want to work banker's hours,
work in a bank.
Work in a bank.
Yeah.
I remember him telling me that he was talking about, if you want a nice job where you show up at 9 o'clock and you leave at 5 o'clock and you don't have any troubles and life's great, it's simple and easy, well, go down to Macy's, get a job in the lingerie department, folding underwear. Yeah. You're going to have some exciting times, but it's not sales.
No.
And I'm going to tell you that real estate saved my family. Yeah. I can tell you, and it's something we didn't really talk about, when I left John Hancock September 30th of 2007, and the stock market went down 777 points that day, which at that time would be the equivalent of the market going down 2,000 points in a day today. And at the time, I have about $400,000 in stock options in John Hancock stock that is going to pay for my kids' college education.
What happened?
My daughter's 9, and my son's 6. And the second largest insurance company in the world. And if you know anything about insurance companies in Wall Street, they're kind of like aircraft carriers. They don't sink, and they just are real steady until they're not. Mm-hmm. And basically all $400,000 was gone in less than 2 weeks.
Damn, I didn't know that.
And all of my college savings was gone. I have a 9-year-old daughter, and I have told both of my children that they can go to any college they want that they get into. You hold up your end, I'll hold up my end. Oh, and by the way, they're going to go to private high school at Mullen, and my daughter is set to go in roughly
3 years.
What?
4 years.
No, 5 years, and then Dunham's going to follow about 3 years after that. So I'm now
on the hook for a big number,
about $1 million.
Yeah,
all in, but I knew that there was no other career that I could take advantage of my strengths, which is to listen and take care of people and to outwork the next guy. And in my ignorance, you're telling me I can do this, so I buy in. And I look around at the realtors around me, and I see, Susie Cupcake over here, and I see, Timmy Ding Dong over here, and they're driving nice cars, and I'm thinking, if that guy can do it, let me at it. Are you kidding me? What I did not realize is that the average realtor in America makes $32,500, and most of them are second incomes for a family. And I'll never forget that when I eventually got asked to manage an office, the luxury office of Coldwell Banker in Cherry Creek in Denver, and I'll never forget this gal who's been in the business for 15 years and is selling a lot of real estate, and she couldn't write a contract. She had an assistant that would write the contract.
Oh, gosh.
She couldn't write an inspection objection. And I scratched my head, and I realized that this person lived in the right neighborhood, was married to the right guy, belonged to the right country club, and all of the traditional metrics that Jack had taught us about sales and marketing and prospecting and know your numbers and get up and make the calls, and all that went right out the window. And I had this deflating moment of, I don't know if my advantages are advantages anymore. How am I going to compete against that?
They're advantages.
And I went back to what another Jackism, which was the right person with the right motivation will find a way. Mm-hmm. And it basically, we just kept pouring in. And, your message to me was, when in doubt, mail it out.
That's right.
And it has worked. The kids got through college, all paid for, not cheap, but the greatest gift we can give to our offspring is, outside of our conditioning their behavior by letting them watch what we do, walk our talk, is an education. And so real estate basically saved me. There's I don't know of any other career that I could have done, but with a caveat, it's not for everybody. No. It is not. It is. Huh. It's a weird lifestyle. But when I managed an office, I would tell agents when they came in, and I would interview 20 agents a month, and I'd pick one. And I would tell them, are you going to be the one? And, I would ask them, have you ever read the book Man's Search for Meaning? I don't know if you've read it. It's basically about a guy. It's an autobiography of a gentleman that was in Auschwitz. Oh. It is a very dark and harrowing novel. And at the end of it, basically, the takeaway is, if you got a big enough why, you can live with anyhow. And so when I think about this business, you have to have a big why. And the why can't be money. It's got to be something bigger than that. Because as my coach, Brian Buffini, who I don't know personally, but he has basically coached me now for almost 15 years, there's not enough money in real estate to do it for the money. There's not. If it's about the money, you're not going to get there.
Well, let's kind of go back to what I said, is that you're in control. I mean, as much as we work for a lot of different people at once, you are in business for yourself. Without the overhead or the start costs that a lot of businesses require.
Oh, dear God.
Yeah. Now, you and I spend a lot of money every month on farming, don't we?
Tons.
But when you
Thousands.
look at the ROI or the margin at the end of the year, It works, doesn't it?
It does. And I think that the reason why it works, it's not because you just slap a stamp on something and send it out, because there's a lot of agents out there that'll send out a Denver Broncos schedule, a chicken fettuccine schedule.
No, banana nut muffin recipe. That's my favorite. I'm so amazed when I see those. Is that a new recipe? But no, I mean, but we do the same thing.
You need to give them information that they want, that will help them remain exposed and educated to the realities of the market, as you taught me.
How many times have you walked into someone's home for an interview and there's a stack like this of your stuff on the table?
It's at least half the time.
Yeah.
At least half.
And it's hard stock, glossy, nice stuff.
Sometimes it's been somebody that's deceased.
Sure.
And the kids are calling me because
that's what
mom has every one of them saved.
No, I tell the story. I'm sitting at someone's living room, and this is a great story. Older couple, and husband's kind of over in the corner. He's on oxygen and doesn't say anything. He's kind of slumped in his chair. And I look underneath the living room table, and she's got a big stack of my stuff. And I know that I'm there because of that. It's not out there for me to see.
No.
The funny part about this story is we get to the point where it's time for me to kind of help the owner understand we've got a lot of knickknacks and stuff around, and we might want to thin the herd a little bit.
Yeah. Old
boy in the chair pipes up and says, "Boy, am I glad you came over." And the lady just looks at him like, "How dare you say that?" And it was this moment. The old boy had not said a word. And she got so upset with him. Anyway, funny story, but it's amazing how it's all about consistency.
Yeah.
And that's really where, again, we both change our voicemails every day.
And what would Jack say? Showing up.
Oh,
you got to show up.
It's 90%.
Right.
Okay. Again, like the story about returning the missed phone call.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I can give story after story of just answering the phone.
Yeah.
I mean, I got a call yesterday, and I could tell in the first 30 seconds, this is a real seller that's got a real need to sell.
Yeah.
And I answer the phone, and sometimes when I answer the phone, Matt Perry, people are like, "Wait, oh, is that a voicemail? No. Are you really answering the phone?" Yeah. I'm here to work. And so I'd say I'm always amazed, and the thing that drives me nuts is how does anybody in our business have a voicemail box that is full? Okay, I'll look at your inventory immediately. If I hear that, I'm going to pull up the MLS and say, "Do you have 30, 40, 50 listings?" No. Okay, so what are you doing?
Right. So you're not showing up.
You said it best. This is the garbage disposal of business in a lot of cases.
Well, I look at it this way, and if I were king for a day, I tell people this industry of real estate. First of all, real estate is 12% of GDP. It is a giant part of our economy.
No realtor knows that.
It has to.
Right.
And I'll share with you in a moment why rates are going to go down by Christmas in just a moment. But when you think about it, in Colorado, I don't know how it is in California, but it is the easiest job in the world to get. 162 hours of classroom study. They give you the answers to the test, and now you are licensed to completely screw up somebody's life impermanently. I mean, it's awful. And then you only have to pay $500 a year with 8 hours of continuing education. Mm-hmm. It's a travesty. I mean, it's an absolute disservice.
It's way too easy entry.
Right. And so it's the easiest job in the world to get, but it's maybe the hardest job. I've been a financial advisor with Merrill Lynch. I have been a traveling wholesaler. I've been a realtor. I've worked for an equipment leasing company. Bar none, hardest job that I've ever done.
Well,
and it's not even close. There is no paycheck. There is no health insurance. There is no benefits. It's 100% you, and you only eat what you kill.
Well, so not to one-up you, but you know the story, okay? Because I was working in a palm tree nursery.
Yeah. You
want to talk about a hard day's work.
That's a hard day's work.
We're talking Ramona, which is eastern San Diego County
in
hot
August.
There? You might as well be on the face of the sun, okay? And the owner of the nursery says, "Okay, I got 120 of these palms tagged. Get down there, dig them, tie them, get them on the truck. And by the way, the reach lift, it's an hourly cost, will be there at a certain time, so you better have all those trees dug. It's hot, it's dusty, it's miserable. I mean, the back of my neck is the color of this." So anybody in our industry that says, "Oh, God, I'm working so hard, and it's such a hard day," you don't know a hard day's work. No. Or like when I cooked in high school and college, you want to stand on that line and see that machine spinning.
Right.
And you've got, first off, you're standing in 110-degree heat, greasy, hot, nasty. So anytime I hear a realtor complaining, I'm like, you know what? I'm so glad you're having a hard day.
Right. Well, it reminds me of a quote from John McKay when he was interviewed about OJ carrying the ball too many times at SC. And they said, are you worried about him wearing out? You're running him really hard, this and that. And he said, last I checked, the ball ain't heavy, and he don't work for no union. So you're right. That's hard work. And yes, real estate's hard. It's dealing with emotions, and you may not eat this and that, but it's not pushing a shovel in 100-degree heat. Let's take a quick break.
Please.
I want to we got about an hour and 20-something minutes, but I want to we hope you enjoyed today's episode of Green and Growing. Don't miss out on future episodes. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to our podcast, and connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube for exclusive updates. Your engagement helps us to continue to provide valuable insights to our growing community. And remember to stay green and growing. Thanks for watching.